Harris CapRock really specializes in assets that are highly mobile and high bandwidth. So as a consequence of that, we really focus in two areas. We're certainly well known for our presence in the energy industry, which is why we're here today. And so we tend to focus in deep water. That's where you see the highest bandwidth assets and certainly a lot of the mobility. And that mobility has really been growing in the last couple of years. It used to be a rig could sit in one place for 5-6 years. Now it might be moving every 9 months. In addition to that, we've really focused on the passenger vessel segment. Within there, the real high bandwidth, highly mobile assets are the cruise ships. And so our core business is right around the deep water and the ocean going vessels. In terms of what we've been doing there is we're not introducing anything specifically new. We've introduced several new products for the last year or so, including the Harris CapRock 1 terminal. We've announced our development in flat panels with a company called Phaser and our cybersecurity offerings. I think what we're really talking to customers about at this show is what they're hearing about connectivity going forward. And so there's a lot of stories going out there on LEO satellites, high throughput satellites, MEO satellites, latency, and I think there's a lot of confusion. And so what we're doing is building a hardware and software roadmap to take advantage of the capacity that we know will come, but we're not exactly sure when it'll come, or who will be able to deliver it. At the same time, we have an infrastructure team that continues to go out and look where we can supplement satellite today with other sources of connectivity, such as LTE, fiber, or radio. And so the consequence of that is we think over the next several years, we're going to be building multi-transport networks, both with different types of satellite connectivity, be it LEO or be it GEO, be it Ka, be it Ku, or be it C. And at the same time, we'll have that supplemented in some areas by other types. And so as our coverage becomes more ubiquitous, our focus continues to shift with our customers. And so as we can deliver more and more megabits, the conversation's starting to shift around performance of the network for their applications. And so it's really working. Some of our customers, frankly, aren't completely aware of the applications that are running on their network. So it's helping them understand what packets are in through their network, what types of performance do they need. And in many cases where we can build out a network of different satellite capacity, complemented with LTE and radio, it's actually sending those packets across different paths to both optimize their cost and performance. And so it's really the evolution of that service that we're focused on here. Sure, so I mean really over the last 2 years, we've seen roughly 6 out of every 10 rigs shut down globally. But what we have seen is continued investment in the personnel and assets that are left in the field. So really in the last 2 years for our customers, in some cases we've seen the doubling, tripling, or even quadrupling of bandwidth per asset. And we do think that's a trend that'll continue. And I really think the downturn is actually part of the driver there. The energy industry, while it's high tech, is highly conservative. And it really sometimes needs a good crisis to think into a different paradigm. And so I think what we've seen in the past is connectivity is really seen as a critical but necessary cost. And as you're seeing the decision-making change a bit, I think what we're finding is, one, there was a lot of latent operational demand, where operationally we would have been better off with more megabits and better connectivity and more optimization, but it was seen as a cost and hence stopped. As it's having to compete with shale and the cost curve is flattening out, you're seeing people taking new approaches across the board, including how they approach connectivity. And so it's starting to allow us to have a different conversation about the type of bandwidth they need. The other big source, it's been a big surprise, is actually crew welfare. And as the industry is down to their core, highly skilled workforce, there is a desire to ensure that these workers stay in place. And while I hear the #1 complaint of crews and remote sites is the food, connectivity is certainly at the top of that list. And so in the past, you might have had an asset with 200 people sharing half a megabit. And through increased megabits and optimization, we can continue. But I think we do see a roadmap where connectivity is going to grow. And so I spoke of the show with Mark Stevens of Oceaneering. What we talked about is how they're using data and how we're seeing customers use data. And as connectivity becomes more critical, as you're seeing especially the service providers move into big data, put things into the cloud, it's a real focus on getting the bandwidth up and optimizing the applications. So we're continuing to see that investment, and when the market recovers in 18 to 24 months, however long that may be, we'll see that trend, I think, carry through with the remaining assets. And the last part would really be, as connectivity does become more important, we're seeing a growing stress on cybersecurity as both an opportunity and threat. And so we're approaching that two ways. We're making significant investments in our network and our processes to, I think, very safely say we have the most secure network in the type of telco where we compete. And we're using GVF as the minimum standard, and we're continuing to bring in and supplement that with our own penetration testing and testing to continue to evolve that. At the same time, we have offered customer offerings which are being deployed to really help defend and monitor their networks, and like we're doing with our standards, helps put preventive measures in place. I think very successfully. Many of the units we have deployed out there today are in the cruise segment, which is a bit healthier since oil is their largest operating cost, but we actually have a significant manufacturing backlog that's almost predominantly to the energy market. And we recently announced with Transocean that we'll deploy Harris CapRock 1 on their assets as part of their technology build out together. And the beauty of it really is, as we know there's going to be LEO and different types of constellations coming up, or if they move into areas where we can provide them with LTE or fiber, they'll be able to do that off of one terminal. And hence you won't have to do welding and cranes and make big adjustments for transits and being in new locations. So it really helps them be in a good position to evolve with what's going to happen throughout the value chain, much of which we can't control, without applying additional capital in the future. So again, very strongly deployed to cruise today, but the backlog very focused on energy as people prepare for the recovery. Sure, I think a good analogy is what Schlumberger does. So many people don't know this, but Schlumberger in the past has invested in battery technology. And the reason was that was really the limit on their value chain, where in their remote and harsh environments, it was the battery that was failing more than their technology or service. And so I think it's the same for us, is in some cases we're not seeing the investment across the value chain where we might need to see it. And we're either partnering with select vendors to deliver that technology or investing on it in our own within a corporation. And so we think that puts us ahead of the curve. And we think, frankly, having a large cruise business as well puts us ahead of the curve as we prepare for high bandwidth and more mobility. So I think it's the combination there, and we're really focused on areas where we see the pinch point. We don't necessarily see the value chain addressing that pinch point. I think for a lot of our technology, the idea is over time, we'll make it non-proprietary, and so customers can feel safe. They can buy this technology from us, but in the medium to long term, it can be addressed by other providers as well. But in the meantime, we think we're solving unique needs, and that's where we're focusing our R&D. And we do think that'll increasingly shift from the hardware to the software. I think it comes down to, if you think about it, whether it's a remote energy asset or a cruise ship, it's almost a P&L. And so it's helping them find the balance of the investment on connectivity versus the cost, whether it's a revenue driver or a cost driver. I think where we're really seeing a shift as well, especially in the energy industry, is by most estimates, roughly 60% of the cuts in IT budgets and energy are people. And I think we know that even as the oil price comes back, many of those people will not be hired back. And while we don't want to turn to an IT services company, we find ourselves offering increasingly to existing customers and new customers product lines we might not have in the past. And so we're increasingly moving and looking a little bit more like a telco, where we're doing voice, we're doing a terrestrial build out for a very specialized systems integration business that really focuses on our existing core customers to meet their needs, and not just an end-to-end communication solution, more of an end-to-end telecommunication solution, including in some cases building out networks for customers that are LTE or radio. And so I think we're seeing the demarcation line move, including on cybersecurity, where people used to try and do everything in-house, and it probably wasn't practical to begin with, but with the energy downturn and the budget cuts, it's increasingly more efficient for a service provider to provide those services. I think on the energy side as well, you're seeing people desire to work with less vendors. As you have less staff, managing less vendors allows you to manage that reduction in in-house personnel. And so increasingly, I think they'll look to us to provide services we haven't provided in the past, or manage other vendors as well. So I think it's the combination of the traditional growth and connectivity and helping them optimize their networks and the value-added services we might not have provided in the past.